The Waiting. Smash subscribe if you're brave enough, hit like if you can stomach the truth, and comment if you think you could survive what comes next, because this story lives in the shadows most people never want to see. The sirens had already faded by the time the body was found. It was 4:12 a.m. when a jogger spotted the shape beneath the overpass on Route 9, just outside a quiet Midwestern town that prided itself on low crime and early bedtimes. At first glance, it looked like trash tangled in weeds. But as dawn crept in, the outline sharpened into something unmistakably human. A man, early 40s, hands bound behind his back with duct tape so tight it cut into the skin. One gunshot wound to the chest. Execution style. Detective Aaron Keller arrived minutes later. He'd worked homicides for nearly 20 years, but something about this scene felt deliberate in a way that made his stomach tighten. No wallet. No phone. No car nearby. Whoever did this didn't panic. They planned. By noon, the victim was identified as Daniel Cross, a local freelance journalist known for filing public records requests that made city officials uncomfortable. Cross had been digging into something big: prison conditions, wrongful convictions, and a string of death row inmates who'd spent decades waiting to die. The timing was impossible to ignore. As Keller scanned Cross's small apartment later that day, the walls told a story the body couldn't. Stacks of legal transcripts. Handwritten notes. Names circled in red ink. Prison IDs. Execution dates crossed out and rewritten. One phrase appeared again and again in Cross's notebooks: 20-plus years waiting. Cross had been fixated on men who entered prison in their 20s and were now gray-haired ghosts, still alive only because the system moved slowly. Too slowly. Meals delivered through slots. Hours of silence. Legal appeals stretching into decades. Survival turning into a mental war rather than a physical one. Then Keller found the file that made him stop breathing. Inside a manila folder labeled J. Morrow were photographs of a maximum security prison cell. Tiny. Concrete. A bed bolted to the floor. And a mugshot dated 23 years earlier. The inmate's eyes were young in the photo, defiant, almost arrogant. A handwritten note was clipped to the folder. He says he didn't do it, but he knows who did. Jacob Morrow had been sentenced to death at age 24 for the murder of a state senator's son. The case was airtight, according to the courts. Witness testimony. Ballistics. A confession that Morrow later recanted, claiming coercion. He'd been on death row ever since, living the same day over and over for more than 2 decades. Keller checked the visitation logs. Daniel Cross had visited Jacob Morrow 3 times in the past year. That alone raised eyebrows. Journalists didn't usually get repeat access to death row inmates without a reason. When Keller spoke to the prison warden, the man's voice dropped. Cross wasn't just asking questions, he said. He was pushing. Talking about misconduct. Lost evidence. Guards who retired early with clean records and full pensions. The deeper Keller dug, the more resistance he felt. Requests delayed. Calls unanswered. A quiet pressure he couldn't quite name. Then came the detail that shifted the case from disturbing to dangerous. Security footage from the prison showed Daniel Cross leaving his final visit with Jacob Morrow just 2 days before he was killed. Cross paused before exiting, turned back toward the interview room, and mouthed something through the glass. The audio was gone. Deleted. But a lip-reading expert later translated the silent words into a sentence that made Keller's blood run cold. "They're going to kill me." Keller stood in the evidence room long after midnight, staring at the file. A journalist dead. A death row inmate who'd survived 23 years of isolation. And a system with too much to lose. Then Keller's phone buzzed with a new update from forensics. They'd found a hidden compartment in Daniel Cross's apartment wall. And inside it was proof that someone on death row might be innocent. The silence between appeals. If this case is already getting under your skin, hit like so more people see what's buried in places like this. And if you believe stories like this deserve daylight, subscribe now, because what comes next is the part they never want told. The hidden documents changed everything. Detective Aaron Keller spread them across the evidence table like fragile relics. Some were copies of internal police memos stamped confidential. Others were handwritten statements from witnesses who had never testified. Dates didn't line up. Names had been altered. One key piece of physical evidence, the murder weapon, had been logged into storage almost 12 hours later than official reports claimed. That gap mattered. In homicide investigations, unexplained time gaps are where truth goes to die. Keller drove to the state prison the next morning, the same facility where Jacob Morrow had spent the last 23 years. The building rose out of the flat land like a concrete scar. No windows on death row. No sound except the echo of boots and keys. Morrow looked nothing like his mugshot now. His hair was gray. His face thinner, sharper, carved by years of isolation. But his eyes, those were the same. Alert. Measuring. Still alive in a place designed to erase that. "You found it," Morrow said calmly as he sat down behind the glass. Keller didn't ask how he knew. "They kill you slowly here," Morrow continued. "Not with needles. With time. Every day the same. Wake up. Count the cracks. Eat when the slot opens. Wait for mail that never comes. Appeals take years. Decades. You learn not to hope. Hope makes it worse." Morrow claimed Cross had come to him terrified during their final visit. Said he'd uncovered evidence tying the original investigation to a private security contractor with political connections. A contractor whose executives later landed cushy government jobs. "They framed the wrong man because the right one scared them," Morrow said. "And once I was sentenced, the case was closed forever." As Keller left the prison, a guard quietly pulled him aside. "Be careful," the man whispered. "People who ask the questions you're asking, they don't last long." That warning proved true faster than Keller expected. 2 days later, one of the witnesses listed in Cross's hidden files vanished. A former bartender who'd originally placed Morrow near the crime scene, then quietly recanted years later in a notarized statement Cross had uncovered. Her apartment was found empty. Phone disconnected. Car abandoned at a bus terminal. No missing person report filed. If this story feels wrong to you, comment right now, because the justice system depends on silence, and your voice is louder than you think. Keller's superiors urged him to slow down. "The case is old," they said. "The conviction is settled." But the pressure wasn't subtle. His access to records was suddenly restricted. Evidence requests were denied. A warning appeared in his personnel file for procedural overreach. Someone was closing ranks. Meanwhile, Jacob Morrow's execution date was quietly rescheduled. 6 months out. No announcement. No media notice. Just another man nearing the end of a very long wait. On death row, time warped around that date. Morrow told Keller the routine changed when execution loomed. Guards spoke less. Meals came earlier. Legal mail slowed to a crawl. The silence grew heavier, more intentional. "They want you tired," Morrow said. "Too tired to fight." Then Keller received the message that made his hands shake. Daniel Cross hadn't been working alone. An encrypted email account, recently accessed, contained a draft scheduled for release 1 week after Morrow's execution. If published, it would expose evidence tampering, political interference, and at least 2 other death row convictions tied to the same investigative team. The article had a title: "How Long Can an Innocent Man Wait to Die?" Before Keller could respond, the account went dark. That night, as Keller sat alone reviewing files, a new alert flashed on his phone. Prison administration had moved Jacob Morrow to a different wing, no explanation given. And for the first time in 23 years, Morrow missed a scheduled legal call. If you're still watching, subscribe now, because what happens next isn't just about one inmate. It's about how many others never make it out alive. The last countdown. Before this story ends, pause for 1 second. Hit like if you believe the truth should never die behind prison walls. Subscribe now if you want more cases like this exposed. And comment below with 1 word, guilty or innocent, because what you decide says everything. The clock finally had a face. 6 months became 6 weeks. Then 6 days. On death row, everyone knew when the end was close. Guards stopped making eye contact. Conversations ended mid-sentence. The air itself felt thinner, like the prison was holding its breath. Jacob Morrow was moved again, this time to a cell closer to the execution chamber. Smaller. Brighter. No shadows left to hide in. Detective Aaron Keller was running out of time. The encrypted draft Daniel Cross had prepared was gone, but traces remained. File fragments, metadata, references to financial records buried deep inside state contracts. Keller followed the money. It led back to a private security firm contracted during the original investigation. A firm whose senior investigator, now retired, had quietly purchased a beach house just months after Morrow's conviction. When Keller finally tracked the man down, the interview lasted less than 10 minutes. "I was told who the suspect was," the investigator admitted, his voice flat. "I was told to make it stick. Everyone wanted it over fast. Elections were coming. A senator's son was dead. Someone had to pay." "Did you know he was innocent?" Keller asked. The man didn't answer. He didn't have to. That confession alone wasn't enough. Not legally. Not fast enough. Appeals crawled. Courts hesitated. Paperwork stalled. The system did what it always did best. It delayed. 3 days before the execution, Keller received a call from an unexpected source. The prison guard who'd warned him weeks earlier. "They're destroying files tonight," the guard said. "Old evidence storage. If it disappears, it's gone forever." Keller broke every rule that night. What he found inside the evidence room confirmed Cross had died for a reason. Ballistics reports altered. Witness statements rewritten. A fingerprint lifted from the murder weapon that didn't match Morrow. Never logged, never tested. It matched someone else. Someone with connections. As the execution hour approached, Keller pushed the evidence to every outlet Cross had ever contacted. Journalists. Advocacy groups. Federal investigators. He didn't wait for permission. 2 hours before the scheduled lethal injection, the prison went into lockdown. Phones rang. Orders were reversed. A temporary stay was issued pending federal review. Jacob Morrow was pulled back from the execution chamber with minutes to spare. When Keller finally spoke to him again, Morrow looked exhausted, but alive. 23 years, Morrow said quietly. That's how long it took for someone to listen. Months later, the case exploded nationwide. Daniel Cross's article was published posthumously using Keller's recovered files. Congressional hearings followed. The private security firm dissolved. Several officials resigned. 2 other death row cases were reopened based on the same investigative pattern. Jacob Morrow walked out of prison a free man at age 47. But freedom came with a cost. In his first interview, Morrow admitted the truth most people never consider. "You don't get those years back," he said. "You don't unlearn the silence. You don't stop counting days." He survived death row, but part of him never left it. And Daniel Cross? His murder remains officially unsolved. No arrests. No trial. Just a reminder that exposing the truth can be as dangerous as burying it. So here's the question. How many men are still waiting in cells like that right now, counting cracks in the wall, hoping someone listens before time runs out? If this story stayed with you, subscribe, because the next case goes even deeper. Like this video so it reaches someone who needs to hear it. And comment below, how long is too long to wait for justice?